One of the worst off places in the state of Washington, one of the most crime-ridden legislative districts in the state of Washington, is sending a bona fide socialist through to the November election. This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. Some patients like me can lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. There's a couple reasons we haven't talked about this race an awful lot, but we are going to start talking about it now. So this is the 43rd legislative district. It's of note for several reasons. First of all, it encompasses most of downtown Seattle, which is supposed to be the economic engine of our state, but it is in a state of disarray. You have open air drug markets, a lot of crime concentrated in that area, very low police staffing, homelessness, substance abuse, mental health issues just overfloweth, even in, what used to be the most beautiful tourist areas like Pike Place Market. So anyway, the 43rd legislative district race results last night make it clear that voters down there haven't learned a damn thing over the last few years about the fact that socialism and going further to the left is absolutely not the direction if they hope to fix anything. So this race is of interest, again, because of where it is, but also because of the contenders. So one of them is our friend Andrea Suarez with We Heart Seattle, someone who started a grassroots organization because she lives in Belltown, was sick of looking at all the trash and filth in city parks that people were supposed to be able to enjoy. She started picking it up with some friends, and that has grown into We Heart Seattle. They picked up millions of pounds of trash and helped homeless people and all of that. So she got 23% of the vote in the primary last night. Sean Scott, who is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, got 54% of the vote. This is someone who is very in favor of police defunding. This is someone who wants a hands-off approach to the homeless, someone who has run a campaign basically accusing Andrea Suarez of being this horrible person who harasses the homeless instead of what we know she is, someone who is out there actually helping the homeless and cutting through the bureaucracy and the red tape. Imagine living in downtown Seattle. Like, imagine walking or driving by 3rd Avenue every day and saying, you know what I think we need? I think we need a socialist. That's insane. 54% of the vote. I don't understand it. I can't wrap my mind around it. And I know some of you might say, well, Seattle gets what it votes for. Fine, that's true. They're the ones who have to live with it. But again, Seattle has to be the economic engine of our state. I mean, that's where the tourism is. That's what potentially draws people to Seattle. But now the people who come here on the ships, what are they met with? Individuals injecting drugs in storefronts and outside of restaurants and in alleyways, people who are, having mental health breaks out in broad daylight, screaming at tourists and all of this. So yeah, it does matter. It does matter. And I'm not ready to let downtown Seattle just go. I have so many fond memories in downtown Seattle. I talk about it all the time. We used to go party in downtown Seattle. Can you imagine that now? I wouldn't be caught dead, because I would be dead if I stayed in downtown Seattle past midnight. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I'm baffled by this. Now, look, and just to talk a little bit about, again, do I go there? Do I go there?
I don't know. Maybe gingerly.
I'm not a gingerly kind of person.
I know.
Here's the thing. We've been told, I'm going to go there. I don't care.
Okay.
We've been told in no uncertain terms to stay away from Andrea Suarez during this race. For those of you who've watched this show, you know how I probably feel about that. And it's one of the reasons we haven't covered this. We've been told in no uncertain terms that our connection to We Heart Seattle, Andrea Suarez, will not be helpful for her to win in the 43rd legislative district, which is very, very blue. Obviously, I don't care what I'm told. I mean, I'll cover the race if I want to cover the race, and I'll cover the race how I want to cover the race. But I think that is ridiculous. And I think it's indicative of the problem and how we end up with 54% of support for Sean Scott, a socialist. It's because reasonable people like me, and I'll say, I think this is true, frankly, for Ann Davison. I think this is true, frankly, for Council President Sarah Nelson, people who I get along with famously, who we have a hell of a hard time getting on the show. And I think it's because they're like, well, Brandi's pretty hard on Democrats. I'm in a Democratic city and I don't want to be seen as being aligned with someone who's like, oh, right wing by Seattle terms. I'm not right wing. I think I'm a very reasonable person. I am socially pretty liberal. I just want the government not to waste hundreds of millions of dollars on solutions that don't work, on homelessness and substance abuse. I don't think it's empathy to leave people living in filth and squalor on our streets and dying with needles in their arms. And yeah, I support the police. I think we ought to support good officers. I think we need more police officers. I am not for police defunding. I don't think we should overtax businesses. Like, if that makes me right wing, then that's fine. I'll be right wing. But I often get this artificial distancing that reasonable Democrats who we get along with great behind the scenes, like, don't want to be associated with us. And then they wonder why there's 54% support for someone like Sean Scott. It's because you guys you've done that to yourselves. You have alienated this whole swath of reasonable people and tried to pretend that you're like more Democrat than you are, and normalized Seattle's brand of being a Democrat and progressivism because you want to fit into that bubble and into that mold. But you're just giving a real toxic brand of politics kind of a free pass when you do that. When you say, well, I need to be a little more like them and I need to fit in with them, as opposed to telling them, well, fuck you, I don't want to be like you. What you are and what you're doing, your brand of politics isn't working. So I'm going to go the other direction and I'm going to own that. And I don't want to be associated with you at all. And that's where they think they're doing themselves favors by being like, oh, let me be a little more Democrat and progressive. And like, let's just, any friends we have who don't fit that mold, like, let's push them off to the side. So we're not associated with them. So you associate with yourselves with the people who you're trying to beat. And in doing so, you normalize them. And you treat us as if we're outside the mainstream when we're not. When we, I think, are more aligned with how a majority of people feel on public safety, crime, homelessness, substance abuse. So, and I'll also say, just on a personal, and I'm not going to get too much into private conversations, but like I said, we have been told in no uncertain terms that, associating ourselves with Andrea won't be helpful to her in the 43rd. And you know where that hits me? Hits me right here. Right in the heart. Yes, I do have a heart. Okay? And on some days it even grows 3 sizes. But it felt bad. It hurt my feelings. Not to mention that you guys, undivided subscribers, who was our charity of the year last year? We Heart Seattle. We chose We Heart Seattle as our charity of the year. We've had subscribers who've been out there doing work with We Heart Seattle, like literally cleaning up garbage because we believe in their mission. So, like, to me, Andrea Suarez and who she is, who she really is, who she has been in her work with We Heart Seattle, that's the person who can win in the 43rd. I don't think that she needs to act like she's more left than she really is or whatever it is, or distance herself from allies. I don't know who's telling her to do that, but I think that's a mistake. Nicole, you want me to shut up yet? Am I fine?
No, I think it needed to be said.
Look, like it makes no sense to me when you want to restore common sense and sanity, and I'm speaking more broadly here of like moderate Democrats who do this often. You want to restore common sense and sanity. You think the brand of progressivism that we have in the state is not working. But you think it's more effective to try to placate those types of people than it is to say, I'm not associating with you at all, and I'm going to turn the opposite direction and associate with this big group of people, even if they are far right, center, whatever it is, who understand that what you're doing isn't working. That doesn't make any sense to me. So now you've alienated people who can help. You've alienated people who agree with you, who are the majority in favor of, again, the fringe minority. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
And just why not utilize, we have a pretty big audience.
We have the biggest social media platform of anyone who traffics in information in Washington state.
And we talk to people with all different opinions. So
Right.
Why wouldn't you just want us to amplify something?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. You have to normalize, like trying to push me off as like right-wing and controversial is the opposite of what you should be doing. Because we're not right-wing and controversial. And when you try to label, when you were like, oh, she's right-wing and controversial, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're making it so. And so when reason, it bothers the hell out of me. It doesn't make any sense. And that's how you end up again with Sean Scott with 54% of the vote. So not to mention, it's like incredibly offensive. And it hurts me right here somewhere. So right, yeah, it's here. Yeah, I still have a heart. It's fine. Anyway, and all this at a time, again, personal beefs aside, whatever it is, getting into the Sean Scott thing, like, what do you think Sean Scott is going to do? Like, Sean Scott wants to leave homeless people in place. He wants to allow people just to out and about use drugs and no big deal, like doesn't want to send them to jail, all these things, at a time when the Seattle City Attorney and most of the Seattle City Council are trying to take the city in the opposite direction, because we've already been to Sean Scott's version of politics, right? Ann Davison, she's proposing going back to sodas. You remember sodas? This isn't a new idea. This is from King 5. Proposal would ban people who commit certain drug crimes from parts of Seattle. It's called a stay out of drug area. This was a normal thing back when I first moved to Seattle. And it's like, oh, we can't do that. We can't ban people from certain areas of the city. So basically what it would be is, hey, you were caught dealing drugs at 3rd and Pine. You can't be in that designated drug area, which might be like they designate areas that says sodas when they have a high volume of drug activity. So yeah, you're a drug abuser or a drug pusher. If we see you in this 6 square block radius, we can immediately arrest you because you're not supposed to be here because you have a stay out of drug area. They also had like SOAP, I think they were called SOAPs, stay out of areas of prostitution. I don't really think that they do that anymore because they've kind of gone past criminalizing prostitutes and more toward Johns, but you can do that with Johns, right? Like, hey, you have a conviction for soliciting a prostitute. So you have a SOAP order. You have to stay out of this area of prostitution, like areas of Aurora Avenue. This is really common sense stuff. It's like, what would I compare that to? It's like, like a judge puts down conditions of release on someone. Like, hey, you're accused of domestic violence. You can't be within 500 yards of your former significant other. That makes sense, right? And if you are within 500 yards of them, we can immediately arrest you. So this is common sense stuff. But again, you think Sean Scott supports sodas? Of course he doesn't support stay out of drug areas. And then from Como News, this is right in the middle of the 43rd Legislative District. You know that Starbucks right across from Pike Place Market? Not the like old Starbucks, but the one that's like when you stand up at that 4-way stop on 1st and Pike and you look down at the Pike Place Market sign, there's a big old Starbucks right there that's always busy. But it's also always like surrounded by drugs and homeless people, and it's not a very pleasant Starbucks to be in. Well, Como News says Seattle Starbucks closes suddenly in busy tourist area, leaving many questioning why. Really? No one is questioning why. We all know why. But you know what I said earlier about alienating reasonable people and not just being honest? Listen to this from the story. A company spokesperson said the store will reopen again, but the timeline is vague as is the reason for the closure. The now vacant site is at 1st Avenue and Pike Street, just across from Pike Place Market. Starbucks declined to say if safety concerns were a factor and stated in an email, quote, "We've determined it is best to temporarily close the store as we evaluate how best to offer a warm and welcoming environment for customers and partners at this store. Grow a pair of balls." That contributes to it. It's the same issue I mentioned earlier. Starbucks not just coming out and saying, as a major corporation with a major footprint in the city of Seattle, 1st and Pike is disgusting. It's not safe. It's not pleasant. It's not safe for our customers. It's not safe for our employees. Nobody wants to drink a cup of coffee sitting next to human piss and feces and someone shooting up fentanyl. That's what Starbucks should say. I mean, maybe a little more diplomatic than that, but that's what Starbucks should say. Instead, they couch it. They won't admit what the problem is. They don't want to offend anyone. And so they just say, we'll reopen at a later date. Starbucks, genuinely, I asked this directly of Starbucks and their marketing people and their PR people. Do you think that'll make the situation better? Do you think taking a position like that will make the situation better? When you whitewash it, you completely ignore it. You downplay it. You know what the problem is. You know damn well why you close the store. People can see it with their own 2 eyes when they've walked by that store or when they've been in that store. It's not a pleasant place to be. So not only are you not doing your own business, you're doing your own business a disservice, by not just saying this is what's going on and everyone should know what's going on. In fact, Starbucks should release pictures. Here's some pictures of this location. So you do your own business a disservice. You do all the businesses around you a disservice who don't have the bully pulpit that you have as a major corporation. And you do the tourists a disservice. You do the residents a disservice. You do the business owners a disservice, everyone in the entire city, and tourism to the city a disservice by not being honest. And you normalize this kind of behavior. Be honest. Grow a pair. How many, broken windows do you have to endure during riots before you just call it what it is, domestic terrorism, and take a firm position on it instead of being meek and quiet? No, it's okay. We'll place the windows. It's just fine. How many locations do you have to close down due to crime and homelessness and drug issues before you come out and say, this is ridiculous? You know how much money we pump into this freaking economy every year? You know how many jobs we provide people? We're not tolerating this anymore. We have a business on almost every freaking block. So I don't get it. I don't get the cowardness. If anybody at Starbucks sees this, please send it to your executive team and tell them to grow a pair and to stop making the problem worse by couching it. It's ridiculous. So anyway, if downtown Seattle elects a socialist, kiss Seattle goodbye. I mean, that's really it.